Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sports. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you, and you are listening to Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte on AM 1270. Also, we're streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app, and we're joining you live for another edition of Faith and Sport as we join you every Monday afternoon from 2 to 3, live from our Charlotte studio for Faith and Sport, an hour where we talk a little faith, where we talk a little sport, and we have an hour of fun here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I'm producer and co-host of the show, Chris, and I'm joined in the studio this afternoon with the host of the show, Dr. John Acquaviva. Give him a hand. Listen to those fans going crazy.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, everybody in the studio audience here, everybody joining us, however, wherever you're listening on Carolina Catholic Radio app, AM 1270, or through the website. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise physiology at Wingate University. But each and every Monday, I come down here to the studio, and we do the show. Now, here's the thing. This show is called Faith and Sport.
That's right.
We have a lot of faith to talk about, a lot of faith going on in the world. Actually, not too much there either, because as a lot of Catholics know, and Chris, you helped actually broadcast through these airwaves yesterday at 1 o'clock, Mass from St. Mark's in Huntersville, right?
That's right. We've been doing that at 1 o'clock each day on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Wait a minute. It was just before the show, too.
That's right.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I like that. And so all this week, they'll play that Sunday Mass at 1 o'clock each day this week.
Well, actually, the different Mass services for each day of the week.
Oh, got it. So today's daily Mass was at 1 o'clock today as well.
Right.
Interesting. And yesterday, that's really neat.
Right.
And was the video supplied for the website as well?
Yeah, we got the link from the St. Mark website. Yeah. They said, send me the link from their Mass services, and I take the audio from those Mass services and edit them and mix them together, and then put them on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network each day, and each Mass service is a different Mass service from each day of the week from St. Mark's.
Got it. So if you're listening to the app, then you hear the audio. But if you check out the website, you get the audio and the video.
Right.
Oh, it's perfect. All right, folks, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to wrap back around to that. We're going to have our hit or miss with Carlos Herrera. He's going to join us here in about 2 minutes. We're going to do our weekend headlines. And our guest today is Dr. Dennis Johnson. He's a sport management professor and chairman of HemView Consultants of Sport Leadership. And he is here to talk to us about something slightly different, but Chris and I have talked about this on air as part of our weekend headlines. We're going to talk about the name, image, and likeness policy that the NCAA is trying to adopt to allow college athletes to get some form of compensation. So after about halfway through the show, we're going to have a break, and then Dr. Johnson will join us, and I'll explain that a little more at that time. And then we're going to end up with a quick Q&A with Dr. A. Now, before we bring Carlos on, there's a couple things I want to share with these folks. You know, it was interesting. My buddy who lives across the street, he's actually in our poker group, and he's got a son that's our son's age and everything, and him and I got a lot in common. One of the things we have in common is sports, and we talk sports all the time, like a lot of guys do. The other day, he's pulling out of his driveway, and he rolls down the window, and I'm small chatting with him, and I said something like, okay, I'll let you go. You got to go on your way, and I'll see you later. And as he's rolling up the window, Chris, he's driving away, and he says, boy, do I miss sports. It was kind of sad at the same time. It was kind of funny, right? But he was being dead serious.
Yeah.
And here's one thing I want to share with these folks. In fact, this is going to come up in the weekend headlines. There are actually no sports to report except for one. There's a major sport that continues each and every day. And I'm going to keep everybody on the edge of their seats when we report that in the weekend headlines. And can you guess what that is, Chris? It's a major sport. It's going on right now. Any idea?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that then. And it's just one of the ways that I think the sporting world is giving back to the fan. But the fact is, folks, is despite the fact that there's virtually no sports going on, we're going to have stuff to talk about each and every week. So continue to join us. We are so thankful that you're here. This is Faith in Sport. We apply our Catholic faith to all aspects of sport.
The only thing I can think of is professional wrestling. That's still been going on.
If anything needs to be cut out, it's that. Yeah. Actually, MME is going on as well, right?
Yeah.
That is, but I wouldn't consider that one of the mainstream sports. The sport I'm talking about is more than 100 years old, and in 100 years old, it was considered one of the major three. And I'm going to give you folks a hint on this. The three major sports in America were the following: baseball, boxing, and this other sport. And I think any old-timers out there would go, I know exactly what you're talking about, Acquaviva. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But let's, before we go any further, let's bring on Carlos, because there's a few things Carlos and I want to talk about. He is Carlos Herrera. He is a certified soccer coach up in the Washington, D.C. area. He joins us just about each and every week from his office in Washington, D.C. Carlos Herrera, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hi, Dr. Acquaviva. Great to be on the show again, and glad to have lived this past week and to be able to be here.
Oh, yeah, this is great. So, listen, before we get into our hit or miss, there's a couple things I want to...
I got fans, too.
I know, you got fans, too. I know that. In fact, Chris, I think the fans are cheering louder for Carlos than they are for me.
It may be.
In fact, I don't doubt that. So Carlos... So about this time last week, I said to my wife, Alicia, Alicia, we got to call or text or email our friend, Father Benjamin, who is the pastor at Our Lady of Lourdes in Monroe. And she said, why would we do that? And I said, because the president has said, the governor has said here in the state of North Carolina, don't get together with anybody where there's 10 or more people gathered. So I wrote Father Benjamin, Carlos, it was around this time last week, might have been Tuesday or Wednesday, and I said, hey, Father Benjamin, I said, okay, so now that you're inviting the Acquaviva family to celebrate Mass this Sunday, this will allow you to invite just 4 others to keep with the president's mandate. And I wrote any 4, won't bother us at all who that is, right? And so it was a little joke, right? He didn't actually invite us, but I wanted to nudge him to say, John, you guys come to the church and I'll just have a Mass for you guys. And he writes back immediately and says, great, the non-parishioner rate is $2,000 per person. And the reason I wrote non-parishioner is we changed, even though we're friends, in fact, that is Alicia's confessor, but we only attend there every once in a while. We have a different home parish. So that's why I said that.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well played.
Yeah, exactly. So I said to him, great. Well, what time? I said, you got it, brother. What time and where on Sunday? So anyway, he wrote back, and this is what, of course, a lot of parishes are doing. They're doing stuff like this. He wrote back, and this is posted on the Our Lady of Lourdes Facebook page, and it says, Father Benjamin will be hearing confessions near the grotto on Saturday between 3 and 4 p.m. He says, please wait in your car or a distant bench until Father is available. And during this time, the deacon will be at the grotto altar. There's a grotto across the street from this church with the Blessed Sacrament. He says you may approach the grotto one at a time to receive Holy Communion. So we didn't go up there for this. This was on Saturday. We were looking for Mass on Sunday. So what our parish did, Carlos, is they, like so many other parishes, they filmed the Mass live, and us and several of our other families, friends, or our other friends and their families, they all took pictures of their kids and their family watching Mass, and we all just sent it to one another, actually, at one point during the Mass. And our 4 kids are all dressed up. Alicia and I are there. We have chairs. We have, on pieces of paper, we have the creed. We have...
that's great.
Yeah. So we all were present for that Mass. And, of course, the big difference, though, and this is one of the main reasons why we go to church, right, is for the Holy Eucharist. So we weren't able to receive the Eucharist. But there was actually a family that was there. And what Father said, he's going to invite one family each week to participate. And I think he does it as much as anything so he has somebody to actually talk to. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, keeping it engaged for him. And
That's right.
also, I think it's really a nice sort of treat for a family to kind of also get out, go to Mass, and kind of do it. I don't think there's many families that actually celebrate Mass or with the priest by themselves, right? Like becomes a really nice experience, like a personal Mass.
Carlos, I remember years ago, you and I and our mutual friend Charlie Wilkinson, seminarian Charlie Wilkinson, who's been on the show before, the three of us were talking, and we were, if I remember correctly, all three of us had been in situations where we were the only ones attending a Mass.
Yes.
And I've done that a couple times now, where it was one time it was just me, another time it was my parents and my grandparents. And Carlos, how people struggled through things like the Creed or even the Our Father with not the rest of the congregation saying it. Do you remember this conversation we had?
I remember having the conversation about being at Mass. Mine was on the beach in Jamaica with Monsignor Albert. So with the water crashing in the background, It wasn't on the beach itself, but his condo was overlooking the water, and we celebrated Mass. I think the 3 days we were there, each one I was by myself with Monsignor Albert. It was a neat experience. But you're absolutely right when it comes to saying those rote prayers.
Oh yeah, in fact, this is true. Now remember, I'm with my grandparents, right? His name is Father John. He's a longtime friend of my grandparents, my mom's mom and dad, the Famuleros, and it was my two grandparents, and it was my mom and my dad and me with Father John at the kitchen table, and he's saying Mass, and we start saying the Nicene Creed, right? And we all start saying it. We have no book in front of us. We have no hymnal. We have nothing like that. And one by one, everybody starts dropping out because they forgot the words. And Carlos, this is a true story. At the very end of the Creed, right? We got about 3 or 4 more sentences to go. We're at our Catholic faith at this point, and the confession of sins and so forth. And it's just me and Father John. Right, we're the only. It was like a contest of sorts, like a game show.
See who fails
that's
early,
right.
Drops out.
That's right. And so eventually, this is a true story. I drop out with just a couple sentences to go, and I was like, "Well, Father John will carry us the rest of the way." Carlos, he forgot the rest of the Creed as well.
Yeah, there's something about the group. Maybe the Holy Spirit's part of that, right? When
that's
everybody's
right.
gathered, it's kind of like propels you forward. If you're on your own, you're kind of like, that's all I got. That's all I got.
Oh, it was so funny. So here's a priest, and literally he was a priest for at least 35 years at that point, and he was just like, I can't go on. He literally just stopped, and then he just goes, "Let us pray."
Too bad we couldn't get a recording of that to air on the show today.
No, I know. That would be, of course, it was one of those situations where it was funny, much funnier afterwards. But I think as Catholics, we're all embarrassed. I think Father John had been around so long, he was like, so I forgot a rote prayer.
Yeah.
Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport. This is where we merge sport and virtue. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Joining us today is Carlos Herrera, certified soccer coach from up in the D.C. area. Of course, sitting in a chair just across from me is producer and co-host Chris Pressler. Okay, let's do this, buddy. We have a few minutes left, so we have plenty of time to talk about our hit and miss in the world of sport. As always, Carlos, you go first. Do you have a hit or miss in the world of sport?
Well, I have a hit, but I actually wanted to switch to a miss.
Okay.
Just based on what you were talking about, and this little change in the play, a little audible.
This is an audible. That's right.
And it has to do with, I was thinking about morality in sports, and this is one that's appropriate for what we're dealing with right now. Muay Thai, which is, some people are very familiar with it, but it's basically like kickboxing.
Yep.
It's very popular in some of the Asian countries, particularly like Thailand, Singapore. Well, in Thailand, they continued with a kickboxing event where they had thousands, I think it was 5,000 people attending. Well, it turns out like 400 people got the coronavirus from attending that.
Is that right?
And wow. And you think to yourself, and a lot of people didn't know they got it from there. But one of the questions is, the morality of, we sort of complain that they've closed all these things down, but where they haven't, they're literally providing a forum for basically spreading this virus to people that don't know, and then they go home and spread it to people they don't know.
Right.
And it just, in an effort to kind of protect people, that's a more responsibility that the promoters have, that the government has, that the individual fighters. And, it's really a surprise that they didn't cancel that.
And I know it's a Thailand-based sport, Muay Thai. You and I both might be pronouncing this wrong, but the example you're giving, did these bouts take place in Thailand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you, buddy. I have to admit, and I don't think I've mentioned it on these airwaves, and I'd love your opinion on this too, but it was just 2 weeks ago, Alicia and I were both looking at each other with every cancellation, whether it was school or whether it was Holy Mass or whatever was being canceled, and all these gatherings were being canceled, and people were backing out, even if it wasn't formally canceled or there was no mandate by the governor or the president. We kind of rolled our eyes to it, but neither one of us really do that anymore. We think we've gotten we've gotten the message that this is serious, and the rate and the ease that this spreads, I think, is real. And with stuff like this, I agree, buddy. This is a great miss on your part, that this is irresponsibility, and this is certainly it goes beyond just ethics. This is a moral issue, right?
Yeah.
If somebody has, and the fact is a lot of people, they are symptom free for days before they actually get it, right?
Yeah, and I think you're not alone with, the majority of the population probably was rolling their eyes with the, overreaction that we felt was being done. But the more, it really is to save 20% of the population, the 20% being those with who are older or compromised immune system. And it really, with how easily this actually gets transmitted, is the real seriousness, right?
Absolutely. Folks, if you have a hit or miss, please contact me in one of two ways. My Twitter account is j.acquaviva1. That's j.acquaviva1. Or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. That's Faith and Sport. A&D is in there. faithandsport@wingate.edu. Carlos, let me ask you this about the virus. One of the things that I've thought about, I'm wondering if you've thought about this, and it'd be interesting to get Chris's input on this. I was just thinking randomly the other day about this. It would be interesting to be able to go back to China and then see exactly how that spread, like via a computer model. But of course, we would never literally have any idea exactly how that happened. Like, we would have to be in heaven and God would have to show us somehow. No, I mean that. I know that sounds like silly or kind of far-fetched, but there's no way to ever figure that out. But wouldn't it be really interesting, kind of like outside of the devastation that this has caused in the economy and, of course, so a lot of people's health and the deaths that it's caused and so forth, but wouldn't it be interesting to see just exactly how it spread?
Well, how it spread or how it originated, because I also think how it originated, and you take that as phase one, and then phase two, how quickly it just, got out to the population, or was transmitted. And by the way, just going back to kind of what we've talked about, and, I think what you and I talked about, reminding our listeners, but, Saint Sebastian is the patron saint of not only athletes and the military, but he happens to be one of the patron saints for the plague.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is kind of the plague of our time, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. In fact, I want to say you might have mentioned that after we were off the air or before we were on the air last week. But either way, I remember we talked about it last week, but I'm glad you brought that up, because even if we did talk about it on air last week, it's just one more person to pray to have this thing come to an end, because this is, I think just about everybody agrees that it's going to be later than sooner that everything gets back to normal. Like, for instance, I was just reading on the MLB website that the president of the Blue Jays, his name is Mark's, let's see, I got it right here. Mark Shapiro. And he was saying, we have to slow down here, folks, because whenever the date is set for the season to begin, we're going to have at least 4 weeks. This is just his suggestion. 4 weeks of practice and spring training games to get the players yet re-ready, basically, for the start of the season. And one of the things in his commentary was, folks, this is not days or weeks away. This is probably months away from this actually happening. And
Yeah, I think, there's so much from the sports perspective and just getting prepared, but they're talking now in China that they're having a retransmission, where people were coming back to China who China had said they were kind of symptom-free, for several weeks, but now it's starting to pop up again, and the fact that it's so contagious, this is, we've never seen anything like it, never imagined anything like this would. I think there's some movies that maybe have talked about,
That's right.
Dawn of the Dead type of thing, but this is really unprecedented and rather, to shut down California and New York where you have to stay in home. I'd hate to be somebody in California that lives in a small condo or apartment, right?
That's right.
It's just unbelievable.
No, in fact, you have a wife, you have a little son, Max. I have a wife, Felicia, and we have 4 small children. And we were talking the other day, even though there's a certain sense of, what do they call it when you're cooped up in the same place? What's the saying there?
Is it cabin fever?
Cabin fever. I was going to say spring fever, but yeah, it's cabin fever. But of course, we don't actually have that because we can go outside at any time. The kids go outside. We were, some of the other kids from across the street were playing near us the other day. So there's not that loneliness factor. Alicia was talking to the mom of these kids. They're literally sitting about 6 to 8 feet away from each other. So there's that social aspect, but who I do really feel bad for, the people that we need to keep in mind, take care of, and ultimately pray for. But I say ultimately pray for, we should ultimately reach out and take care of them, are the lonely and the people that are by themselves, because not only are they probably not being looked after as much as they were just say a month ago, I think they're really scared because of, they're hearing a lot of the stats that say most of the people that are going to be infected and actually die from this or get really sick are the people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And, of course, who's most likely to be alone in our culture? It's the older people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, folks, don't forget about those folks, even if it's throwing some finances their way. But I don't think we could reach out to those folks too much, so keep that in mind. That's certainly part of our Christian faith is to do that. Speaking of our Christian faith, this is Faith in Sport, where we apply our Christian faith to all aspects of sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We have on the phone with us Carlos Herrera. We're talking both about our hit and miss in the world of sport, and we're talking about the obvious, the coronavirus. Thank you either way for joining us today, folks. Let's move on to I have a hit, and it has to do with Tom Brady. In fact, it is Tom Brady leaving the Patriots and going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And some people would say, well, why is that a hit? And I'm trying to come at this from a different angle, because the other day when I heard that he was leaving, because I think I even said it, Chris, didn't I even say that on the show 2 weeks ago or last week? I go, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I did say this on air. I go, people are crazy after 20 years if they think he's going to leave Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And Carlos, I don't remember if I said that as part of you being on the show and part of our segment together. But either way, I said it probably more than once, and I certainly said it to anybody who had listened to me in the last month. I said, you're all crazy. He's not going anywhere. I thought it was a ploy. And I
would have disagreed with you.
You would have really? You would have said,
yes,
I think he's leaving?
Because of the evidence that's out there, and really it's about money and performance. Just because you've seen this in sport, right? But go ahead.
Well, yeah. So here's why I think it's a hit. I just think so many times, both in sport and in life, we get into this comfort zone, right? What we expect to happen, what we hope to happen, doesn't always happen. And I think in this case, it's a good thing. Now, let's face it. Yeah, a Pats fan and if you're a big Tom Brady fan, you got to be really disappointed. In 20 years, that guy went to 9 Super Bowls. 9. That stat could be said over and again, and it still doesn't sink in on how impressive that is. 6 times he won it, and in each one of those times, everybody kept saying, "Man, this guy's unbelievable," right? Like he's the greatest ever. All that stuff aside, I took a step back after that happened. I said, this is actually good. We all get in our little comfort zones and we all want and expect certain things to happen. And it just took us right out of that. And you and I were talking about before we went on the air, Carlos. I was thinking, I don't even know really how to articulate it, but I just like the fact that it happened. And I like the fact that whatever we hope to happen, whatever we expect to happen, doesn't always happen. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. But
you right there with what you just said.
Yep.
You could sum up our life of faith and our life here on this planet, right? Like,
That's right.
Faith, like, how many times do we pray for something to happen a certain way?
That's right.
And it doesn't, and it may go a different way, but there's always some silver lining or something else that we needed to get or, helps us in one way or another, right?
Yeah, in fact, it does make me think of salvation because I think, especially for Catholics, man, we go to Mass each week and we tithe and we maybe even go to receive the sacrament of confession and so forth. And then our expectation is probably, well, I'm going to heaven, or salvation is going to be waiting for me. And I've given myself a great opportunity to earn salvation, not earn salvation, but to be granted salvation and so forth.
Yes.
But the fact is Scripture is pretty clear about this, that many are invited, but few get through that little hole. And that's just something that we should never lose focus on. And you're right. All I'm saying can be encompassed into our faith, that what we hope for, what we expect to happen, may not actually happen.
Well, speaking of salvation, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to be happy.
That's right. So, no, seriously, we'll end on this note. But if I would have said this on air with you last week, you would have said, oh, no, I disagree. I think he's leaving.
I don't know that I would have said he's leaving. I would have said there's a lot of, I mean, think about it. He's been with the Pats for the 20 years he's been with it.
That's right.
There's a lot of people that say, well, he's only good because he is with Belichick.
That's right.
Belichick's only good because he is with Brady. I think at some point, right, and obviously economics plays into this and what you think. You at some point, Brady was going to have to leave, right? It's nothing is forever, which is another saying that you could take with you and process that. But I really felt like, there have been other players where they've been excellent for their team, and it was time to go. The other team was time to move on and start bringing in the younger person. You can't do that with paying that one star as much money as he had, or whatever the figures are.
No, that's a great point, buddy. I did not think of that. That after 20 years, he probably got tired of, well, Bill Belichick's really the mastermind behind this whole thing. And, of course, Tom Brady's like, well, I got something to say about this as well. It's just that he picked a peculiar time. You thought he would have done this after 10 years or even 15, but here he is doing it after 20 years. But still.
And that's one of the hits. He has kind of, and he's talked about this, he's kind of excited about this opportunity just to see what he can do. And I'm sure the Bucs are thinking the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so
let's hear it for the old guys, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know. In fact, even though I'm a Michigan fan, I always end up voting for these older guys because they're the only guys in the league that are within 1 decade of how old I am.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Peyton Manning. I mean, he there towards the end of his career, he went to play for the Broncos and took them to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, and won and retired.
Actually, Carlos, I said I was going to leave you on that note, but there's one more thing I wanted to share with you on air. And I saw this story, I think it was in the Detroit Free Press, and it was so interesting. It comes back to what your miss was with the Muay Thai, martial arts thing about infecting people. And it said, if you desperately want football season to start on time, you need to self-quarantine. And I thought that was so interesting. No, you guys both laugh, but that's true, right? Mm-hmm. In other words, if the more that we socialize and the more we kind of break these code of,
recommendations.
Absolutely, and these mandates and so forth, the more likely it is to spread. And the more likely it is to spread, clearly it's directly associated with whether sport's going to be on time or not, or going to be played at all. Heck, baseball season might not start until like July 1st, August 1st. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Hey, listen, as always.
Great being on the show again.
Absolutely, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Week. Yep.
There you
Have
go.
a good one,
too.
Carlos.
See you, Chris.
All right, that's Carlos Herrera, a certified soccer coach from the Northern Virginia area. He joined us from his office up in Washington, D.C. And right now we'll move on to Weekend Headlines.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's time for Weekend Headlines on Faith and Sport with Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hey, man. Okay, here's what we're going to do today, folks. We're just going to talk about a couple sports. Of course, There's only one sport going on, but I'm going to keep you guys hanging until our. What did I say? No, in fact, I'll do it at the end of this. I'm going to keep you folks guessing what actual major sport is actually still occurring on a daily basis. Major League Baseball, as I mentioned, Blue Jays president Mark Shapiro has said that he's going to grant, along with the other owners, probably at least 4 weeks of spring training and practice time before the season begins. And if they're talking about an April start, I don't think that's going to happen, even a late April start. So with every week that this goes by, it's another month before the regular season begins. And as he mentioned, and as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, I think we're talking about closer to the end of June or July before the Major League season starts.
Yeah.
In college basketball, get this, Chris, a national champion has been named. Did we talk about this on air? I think we talked about this off air. The state Senate of Florida voted, I think it was unanimously, to have FSU as the national champs. So instead of playing games, they're just having people vote on it. But you know what they did? I'm pretty sure it was the same chamber of people that voted UCF, University of Central Florida, as the national champs a couple years ago in football. And I thought that was, but the funny thing there was they actually played the games to determine a national champ. Here, they're just like, we're going to vote FSU in, but I have a feeling the NCAA is not going to recognize that championship.
No.
In fact, they might not even have won the ACC tournament, but they were the best team. God bless them. They must be frustrated. This is the best they've ever finished. They're finished in the top 5. And to tell the truth, they very well could have won not only the ACC tournament, they could have won the whole national tournament. But we'll never know.
No, it would have been interesting to see because my Wolfpack was doing pretty well until it got canceled.
That's right. They easily could have beat.
Really disappointed.
I mean,
over that.
NC State could have beat anybody in there. I thought it would have been interesting to see that thing play out.
Yeah.
In pro golf, this is interesting, and this isn't the answer to my question where I said what major sport is being played, but they are doing what are called mini tours in the state of Arizona. Arizona, I think it's one of the few. Let's see what it says here. They have the fewest coronavirus cases in the United States.
Probably because it's so hot.
Well, that's probably true, right? I think there's something to be said about that. The hotter it is, the less likely this particular virus can live. Mm-hmm. But they are playing what are called mini tours, and both men and women professional golfers on separate venues are playing what are called mini tours. And I think in the one there was like 27 guys on it. And I don't think any of the major players are there, though, but they're keeping their distance. And this is directly from ESPN. It says the Cactus and the Outlaw Tours, the men and women's respectively, have pushed on to Arizona. And the Outlaw Tour, a men's tour with events across the Phoenix area, held a 3-day tournament last week in the Western Skies Golf Course in Gilbert.
So there's golf outlaws?
That's right. It says, it's definitely strange, says one of the players, but we're taking precautions. And these guys, this shows that they are outlaws, right? They're outliers for sure. Listen to this. It says, all carts are sanitized before each of the 3 rounds, and those players who didn't walk were limited to 1 person per cart. The players were asked to space out on the course to follow social distancing guidelines, and the post-round hugs often found in women's golf were replaced by waves. The last, and some people just, of course, did the elbow touch. Even the group photo at the end of this had social distancing. Cactus Tour Director Mike Brown had the players stand arm's length apart before taking the picture. I know. Why are you guys standing so far from each other in that picture? And somebody's like, remember the coronavirus a couple years ago? That's why we're doing it.
Oh, I just thought it was because you didn't like each other.
That's right. That's right. So this will be interesting to see if they keep doing this. But I don't know. Is this good, bad, or indifferent? I don't know. But for the most part, I think people like to see stuff like this because some normalcy is continuing, right?
Right.
At least in the world of sport. All right, just another minute here with weekend guidelines or headlines. The big news, of course, in the world of NFL, we already talked about. Tom Brady's leaving the Pats for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Cam Newton, around here, just as big a story. He's out as the Panthers QB. Yep. In comes Teddy Bridgewater at $20 million plus per year for the next 3 years. I think that guy's a winner. Yeah. I really think he's going to do well. And Phillip Rivers is going to the Colts. He's been with the Chargers for, almost 2 decades as well, and he's moving on to different teams like Tom Brady is. And the only sport not really missing a beat is horse racing. They have 24 tracks going at this point. In fact, almost all of them are racing today. And by the way, the Derby, which is always this first Saturday in May, is now slated for the fall. So the Kentucky Derby, one of the big, not only the big, race in all of horse racing, but in all of sport is going to be postponed until it's just yet one more thing. It's postponed.
Well, I hope you remember to call your bookie.
That's right. In fact, Ed has one, so he'll talk to us about that. And if Ed's listening, he knows the little joke that we have with that.
And
all right.
Speaking of Ed, I'm sure he was disappointed to hear that the Olympics are going to be postponed until 2021. I just saw the latest headline on that.
Is that right? It's official now.
Yeah, veteran International Olympic Committee member Dick Pound told USA Today Sports this afternoon that the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games are going to be postponed likely to 2021 with the details to be worked out in the next 4 weeks.
Very good. Okay, that makes sense. In fact, we're going to touch on that with our quick Q&A with Dr. A.
Sorry, Ed. I know you're upset about that.
All right. Hey, hi to Ed out there if he's listening. Ed will join us as the periodic co-host again in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
All right, folks, that's weekend headlines, sports headlines that may or may not change your life.
Yeah.
Okay, after this, we got Dr. Dennis Johnson, sport management professor and chairman of hem-view Consultants of Sport Leadership, to talk to us about name, image, and likeness policy that's going to be adopted or should be adopted by the NCAA. But until then, let's go to break. We'll be back right after this message.
That's right. And before we go to break, we just want to mention to you that there's plenty of opportunities for you to catch an encore presentation of Faith and Sport throughout the week here on Carolina Catholic Radio. If you happen to miss any of Faith and Sport live here on Monday afternoons, you can catch an encore presentation of Faith and Sport. Just go to the Carolina Catholic Radio website at carolinacatholicradio.org and click on the Program Guide tab under EWTN. Carolina Catholic Radio Program Guide, and you can see all the Faith and Sport encore presentation times throughout the week. So if you miss any of Faith and Sport live, you can catch an encore presentation of Faith and Sport throughout the week on Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270 Charlotte, also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And we've got more Faith and Sport live coming up right after this break.
Check out the new Carolina Catholic Radio mobile app with prayers, learning, news, and more. Be sure to download it today.
Charlotte, North Carolina, what's going on? This is Hard as Nails Ministry. My name is Jacob. I'm a missionary with them, and we're partnered up with the Carolina Catholic Radio Network here, and we want to thank you all. We want to thank the Charlotte area because we did a lot of missionary work. We were there for about an intentional time of a month and a half in this Charlotte area, specifically around St. Mark's Catholic Church, St. Thomas Aquinas, and all of the surrounding areas. And we just want to thank you all. We want to thank you for inviting us, for allowing us into your area there to minister, to be ministered to, and to really spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as some of you may know, like St. Mark's Middle School, right, is on fire with a You're Amazing message. There's little kids screaming it and yelling to their parents, "You're amazing! You're amazing!" And it was awesome. And one of our missionaries and me, we went in there for intentional days and taught in their theology classes and gave them the You're Amazing message. And a lot of them have sent us messages just being encouraged, and parents have reached out and saying thank you for what you done to my children. But we want to thank you because without the staff of St. Mark, without fraternities, without Women of Joy, without St. Mark's Middle School, without Christ the King High School, without these venues, we never would have been able to come. So we want to encourage them and thank them for their commitment to Christ, because they matter. They are amazing. That's why the impact matters in this world. That's why it matters when we don't have Mass as a Catholic faith, because we're made amazing. So I want to thank you all, and I want to thank everyone that's on here. God bless you all. Remember, you're amazing. And guess what? We're going to be back. We will be back in 2021 in the Charlotte area. Please contact us, because you know what? It's time to change this world.
Hi, folks. Dr. John Acquaviva here, host of one of the local shows on Carolina Catholic Radio called Faith and Sport. And I invite you to check out my new book, Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. This book is meant to address one of our culture's silent soul killers, feeling terrible about how we look. But remember, God has something to say about this as well. That's Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching, available at tanbooks.com or Amazon. And be sure to join me each Monday at 2 p.m. for Faith and Sport.
Local Carolina Catholic Radio features up to 8 minutes of local programming every hour, highlighted by local news and events of interest that bring Carolina Catholics together. Catch the spirit. Prayerfully consider a tax-deductible donation today at carolinacatholicradio.org.
And we are back here on Faith and Sport Live on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270 Charlotte. Also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. I'm Chris, your co-host and producer, and as always, your host, the one, the only, Dr. John Acquaviva. Yeah, let's hear it for him.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the show. Listen,
can't tell there's any coronavirus going on around here.
Folks, we're going to get into this conversation here in 1 minute. Dr. Johnson's going to join us here to talk about this name, image, and likeness policy that the NCAA has adopted. And it might very well, I should say, spur an idea or a thought or an opinion in your head about this. So if it does, tweet me at j.acquaviva1 or email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. That's A-N-D between faith and sport at wingate.edu there. So let's do this. Dr. Dennis Johnson is going to join us in a couple minutes. He's a sport management professor, chairman of hem-view Consultants of Sport Leadership, and he's going to join me for this conversation. But before he joins us, let's give this some perspective and some direction. So for decades now, supporters of paying college athletes, most often sports media figures and former athletes, have been pushing for some type of compensation for those who play college football or basketball in particular. Its supporters are now hopeful that student athletes will be able to generate income through endorsements rather than relying on direct payments from the university. So following years of pressure on the NCAA to create a payment system, the state of California took action by passing a bill in the fall of 2019, not even a year ago, to allow student athletes to be paid. Florida, Colorado, Illinois, and others have similar bills forthcoming. The NCAA, anticipating these bills being passed, formed a committee in May 2009 to start addressing this issue, and eventually the Board of Governors voted this past fall to unanimously allow student athletes to be paid for their use of their name, image, and likeness. In other words, they could get endorsement deals. They could be on TV, they could be on posters, they could be on billboards, they could get money through a video game, and so forth. So that gives it some background. And the final point here is the three NCAA divisions are now considering specifics on how to instill this policy. To talk about this more, here is Dr. Dennis Johnson, a sport management professor. Dennis, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, it's always great to be back here, John.
I appreciate it. I know you're one of the regulars on this show. I always appreciate this. So there's a history, though, here, isn't there, with this whole thing about paying athletes. Why don't you walk us through that just in the next minute or two?
Well, yeah, first of all, the paying of college athletes has been struck down in courts throughout time.
Sure.
And it's just not really a mover in terms of that. However, in the O'Bannon versus NCAA, just recently, they found that one of the previous court cases, when they were turning down the paying of college athletes, I believe it was NCAA versus the Oklahoma Board of Regents. They let it slip there when they did their final analysis that the NCAA didn't necessarily have control over the name, image, and likeness of college athletes. So that's kind of brought us to where we are today, in that, it's really open for discussion now that they should or can be paid for those things.
So let me ask you this, the name, image, and likeness policy, this one that the NCAA Board of Governors have unanimously voted to allow this to occur. The three NCAA divisions are now considering this. Let me ask you this, Dr. Johnson. Is this the answer, or is just the best thing that can be put forward? In other words, when this first was discussed, did you say, finally, this is it, this is the way to do it? Or are you just saying, all things considered, this is the best the college athlete could hope for?
Well, let's first of all, let's start with this. Let's start with a little history. Let me give you an example of Jeremy Bloom, who wanted to play football for University of Colorado.
Yep.
This is back in 2002, and he was an Olympic skier, skied the 2002 Olympics, and when he came back, he turned down his scholarship and wanted to make money with his technique videos and so on, so he could train for 2006.
Sure.
And the NCAA said he could not do that. So that's kind of has brought us to where we are. And let's I think we have to be clear that this is not a roundabout. And I think I heard you mention this a moment ago. This is not a roundabout to pay college athletes. It's only to allow them to make some money, like the music student or the art student that makes money outside of his coursework to make a salary.
That's true. But let me ask that question then slightly different. When you and I first wrote about this in 2012, an article that came out in the Sport Journal, Johnson and Acquaviva, point counterpoint on whether college athletes should be paid. By the way, you and I aren't the only ones to write on this issue. I think we're one of the first to do it, at least in a peer-reviewed journal just a few years ago. But now that
in a research-based setting.
That's right. But is this the best thing that the college athlete could hope for? Because the bottom line is this, Dennis: probably only the best athletes in their sport, and not even on every team, are going to have the opportunity to earn some money. Is this the worst or the best of all possibilities, or what's your overall thought on the nil issue?
Well, it's true. There are very few athletes that are going to have market value based on their name.
Yep.
So, from that perspective, I would say, if you have the talents, then you get paid for those talents, as opposed to the middle of the road athlete who's there for an education and to compete.
Is this then going to cheat the really good athletes from making any type of money? Because here's the irony with this, especially in the sport of basketball, Dennis. You know this as well as I do. And I know that you're probably not as big as basketball fan at the college level as I am and as I've been throughout the years, but one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm not the first person to say this, is that the interest in the NCAA tournament, for instance, has gone down for me and so many other spectators, because we used to know those players. We used to know their numbers. We used to know stuff about those players. Before you even get to know how good these guys are, you don't even know their name, where they're from, what number they wear. They jump to the NBA or they jump overseas to play professionally. So is this, I don't know, in a way, was this a coy move on the NCAA to way to like, okay, we will basically, I'm at a loss for the word, but they're just like saying, okay, let's divert the attention away from paying all these athletes to letting someone else play these great ones or pay these great ones. Is that kind of what's happening?
I don't really think so. I think that the courts have caused this to occur. Based on the fact that it's clear we cannot pay college athletes if the NCAA is going to maintain their amateurism status, and that's what they have done. And we had one author who recently wrote an article in our special edition journal who really indicated that the amateurism thing is a good thing for the NCAA, and this in fact is a way to allow some of the athletes with market value to be reimbursed for their name, image, and likeness.
Folks, we're talking to Dr. Dennis Johnson. He's a professor of sport management and the chairman of HemView Consultants of Sport Leadership. In fact, you can check out his consulting business at hemviewconsultants.com. In fact, if you go to that website and let's see, if you go just to About Dr. Johnson, toward the bottom of that page, you can see some of the books that he has authored. And then underneath where it says other publications, it says the North Carolina Journal. And this is a special issue in which Dr. Johnson and I both co-edited. And it's all addressing this NIL policy, name, image, and likeness policy that may be fully adopted by the NCAA in the upcoming years. If you had to guess, Dennis, from what you know, in fact, people would probably look to you and I as much as they would anybody. When do you think, if this is going to be adopted, when do you think it'll first be implemented? Probably in the year. My guess is starting with the school year of 2021.
Well, as we reported, the NCAA has charged the three Division to develop a plan by, I think, this coming spring.
That's right.
And if they have a plan in place, if each of them have a plan in place by the spring, I could see that being implemented by the next school year. But I'm not sure on the deadline date for the three divisions to have their plans together.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that either. All right, so let me put you on the spot here, brother. When you and I wrote this and co-edited the set of articles, one was from Olympic sport coach, another was from a former athletic director at Division I level and so forth. One of the things that I did was I wrote, these are the potential problems of the NCAA instilling such a policy. And I gave a series of problems. In fact, I specifically spell out 6 problems. Which one of those, and I asked you to read this beforehand, but which one of those is the most credible? In other words, which point do I make that you feel has the most credibility?
Well, I really kind of struggle. You know me. I struggled with most of those points.
Yeah.
The two that I think have some merit. There might be some issue with the agents that they may have to put in place to control this.
Yeah.
I think that could be an issue. But as far as some of the rest of the points, I think the way the divisions will work in laying out the way this is going to work, I think they will take care of a lot of the problems that you talked about.
Yeah.
I know you talked about you think it's going to cause damage in the locker rooms because some guys are getting paid and some aren't.
That's right.
But I think you have some of that even today because you just brought up the NCAA basketball and those teams that have players that are going to the NBA after 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, they still have 3 or 4 or 5 other players who are not going to the NBA the next year, and they still perform as a team. So I think there's some holes in that.
Let me ask you this outright. Despite the problems that I address, overall, do you feel that you feel comfortable with this? And you said, yeah, this is definitely should move forward. You would probably readily admit that there might be some problems here or there, but so many policies and so many rules and so forth, there can be. And I would never say that there's not going to be some problem with any new rule or any new statement or mandate or whatever. But overall, do you feel fairly comfortable with this moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's actually the right thing to do. Just going back to that Jeremy Bloom case. I mean, that young man should have been able to play football at the University of Oregon and sell his talents on the Olympic ski slope. I mean, that only makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Going forward, if there are athletes out there like that can make money off their talents outside of the university, I feel they should be allowed to do that. Now, I will put forward one caution, only because I am an Olympic sport guy, and that's the scholastic and collegiate wrestling. The one thing that I could see happening if colleges begin to lose sponsorship money. In other words, they're paying money to athletes instead of to the university.
Yep.
I worry that it might affect some Olympic sports in terms of being cut or their funding being cut.
Yeah, it's legitimate. In fact, ever since, not is this anything new. Whenever there's anything talked about with paying college athletes, giving them some type of compensation, I think the little guy, and that's what are called the Olympic sports, everything from swimming to wrestling, gymnastics, and a few other sports, I think everybody gets scared, and I think it's legitimate fear. It's something that very well could happen, but there's no reason it should. That's for sure. It's just that it may happen. Well, let's do this. We have a minute remaining. I want to talk a little bit about, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about HemView Consultants, specializing in sport leadership. So what would somebody have in mind, like a conference or need of a speaker? How could you help them in the world of sport leadership?
Yeah, I can help a lot of different people, and primarily I'm looking at like youth sports that need coaching or parent education, high school coaches, programs of that nature. In fact, I work right now with college coaches, but it's coming into an organization and actually helping them evaluate what they got going on and helping to develop their coaching education and parent education modules. Those are the types of things that we really can influence.
Yeah, very good. Folks, we're talking to Dr. Dennis Johnson. He was just mentioning what you can find out about his consulting business. They specialize in sport leadership. Check it out at hem-view, H-E-M, consultants.com. Dr. Dennis Johnson, thank you for joining us, talking about NIL, and we'll talk soon, buddy.
Good deal. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you got it, DJ. There you go, Dr. Dennis Johnson, otherwise known as DJ in the world of his friends. Check him out again at hemviewconsultants.com if you're interested in having a speaker come out and talk about sport leadership. Folks, that's all we have time for regarding our guest. We're going to do a quick Q&A, but one of the things I want to do before we get going, Chris, is you mentioned earlier, in fact, we could say we broke it right here on Faith in Sport, was that the 2020 Olympics have been postponed and probably will be rescheduled in the year 2021. And you know what I didn't know until the other day, Chris, is that I was frustrated, like I mentioned in the conversation with Carlos, that when they start calling these things months ahead of time, I'm like, why are you doing that? But the reason it made sense for the Olympics was because the gymnasts, the swimmers, and so many other athletes, they were disallowed to train in the normal facility.
Right.
And if they weren't able to train, they weren't going to be in their top fitness. They weren't going to be in their skill wasn't going to be honed in those months leading up to this. Because remember, they not only practiced for months prior to, but years prior to that.
Right.
And so at this point, it does actually make sense.
Yeah, and I had already read that Canada had decided to keep their athletes out of the Olympics if the Olympics weren't postponed.
That's right. I'm glad you shared that because I read that earlier too, and I may have forgot to even mention that. So yeah, I think overall, in the scheme of things, the Tokyo Olympics being postponed until 2021. Now, they didn't mention that it was official. They just said it was canceled, and that probably will be postponed until 2021.
That's right. They said that there would be more details released in the next 4 weeks.
There you go. Yeah, and
for sure.
And that would make sense. And the main reason I hope that they don't cancel and they just postpone it is think about the thousands of athletes have been preparing for literally 4 years.
Right.
Let's give them a chance to perform. And let's face it, it's something that virtually everybody in the sporting world enjoys. Turning on the Summer Olympic Games on NBC or ABC, whoever's covering it, it's on for 3 weeks. And it's just kind of like a source of comfort. We turn on the TV.
That's right. Hear Bob Costas on there talking.
That's right. That's right. No, seriously, I enjoy it. And there's so many things. And I think the United States tends to do well in the Summer Olympics and so forth. So let's say a prayer that is not actually canceled. It's just postponed. All right, folks. I want to conclude with the following from Pope Francis. Sorry. Hopefully one day our current Pope Francis, he said about sport, the beauty and joy found in sports, whether playing or watching, is something that benefits and unites everyone, regardless of religion, ethnic group, nationality, or disability. So there you go, folks. And before we go, I want to say a special thank you to Chris, our producer, to Carlos joining us on here to do our hit and miss, and for Dr. Dennis Johnson for talking about the name, image, and likeness policy. Thank you guys for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for Faith in Sport. And the patron saint of sports, St. Sebastian, pray for us.
That's right. And again, we want to thank you for tuning in for Faith in Sport on this Monday afternoon. And we want to invite you to tune in again next Monday afternoon for more Faith in Sport live from 2 to 3 here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And make sure, if you missed any of the show, to tune in throughout the week for an encore presentation of Faith in Sport on Carolina Catholic Radio. Just go to the carolinacatholicradio.org website and check out the program guide tab, and you'll see all the encore presentation times throughout the week to catch an encore presentation of Faith in Sport. And for myself, Chris, and Dr. John Acquaviva, we'll meet you back here next Monday afternoon for more Faith in Sport. Have a blessed week and a great week, everybody.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.